For centuries, there's been this one question that has fascinated and honestly puzzled historians and geneticists. It's a real mystery about migration, identity, and the incredible secrets that are locked away inside our DNA. So, what is this big question? Well, it sounds simple, but the answer has been anything but. It's this: where do Ashkenazi Jews actually come from? For a long, long time, the debate really boiled down to two completely different stories. On one hand, you have the Rhineland hypothesis. This is the idea that Ashkenazi Jews are descended from Middle Eastern communities who migrated up into Europe. But then there's the Khazar hypothesis, which suggests something radically different, an origin from a huge Turkic empire that converted to Judaism about 1,000 years ago.
All right, so to really get to the bottom of this, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll dig into the Khazar theory itself. Then, we'll look at the incredible new genetic study that was designed to finally test it. After that, we'll decode the actual DNA evidence they found, and finally, we'll reveal the study's ultimate verdict.
So let's start there. What exactly is this Khazar origin theory? The thinking goes like this. The ancestors of most modern Ashkenazi Jews weren't from the Middle East at all. Instead, they were part of the Khazar Khaganate, this really powerful group of Turkic tribes whose leaders converted to Judaism. The theory suggests that after their empire collapsed, these people migrated west, into Europe, and became the Ashkenazi Jews we know today. And just look at this map. It really gives you a sense of how massive their empire was. At its height, the Khazar Khaganate was a major world power. It stretched all the way from modern-day Ukraine to the Caspian Sea, controlling that whole strategic area north of the Caucasus Mountains. Okay, so you have this 1,000-year-old theory. How in the world do you go about testing it today? Well, that's where modern genetics comes in. A landmark study set out to finally, hopefully, solve this mystery for good. But right from the start, there was this huge challenge. The Khazars, as a people, basically vanished from history. They left no known descendants that we can point to today for a direct DNA comparison. It's kind of like trying to solve a giant puzzle when the most important piece is just gone. Now, there had been other attempts to solve this, but they had a major flaw. As the researchers in this new study point out, earlier work used modern-day Armenians and Georgians as stand-ins, or proxies, for the ancient Khazars. But that's a really big problem. The Khazar Empire, remember, was centered way to the north of them. So any genetic connection could just be from some shared ancient Middle Eastern ancestry, not a direct link to the Khazars. So to get around all these issues, this new study was just massive. We're talking genetic data from nearly 1,800 people spread across more than 100 distinct populations. And they analyzed over 250,000 genetic markers for every single person. Just incredible scale. And here's the real game changer. To build the most complete picture ever, these researchers did something no major study had done before. They went out and collected brand new samples from right inside the historical borders of the Khazar Empire, including the North Caucasus and the Volga region. They went straight to the source. So, with all that data in hand, the stage was finally set. Let's dive in and decode the evidence. What did all this DNA actually reveal? Okay, the first tool they used is called Principal Components Analysis, or PCA. The easiest way to think of this is like a genetic GPS. It takes all that incredibly complex DNA data and plots every single person on a map. And the rule is simple. The closer two dots are on this map, the more genetically similar those people are. And here is the result. It's pretty striking. The Ashkenazi Jewish samples, they're labeled ASJ here, they form this tight little cluster right smack in between other Jewish groups, Southern Europeans and Middle Eastern groups. And meanwhile, look way over here, the populations from the Caucasus region are really far away on this genetic map. There is just no overlap at all. All right, the second tool is called admixture analysis. Now, this one is like figuring out a population's ancestral recipe. It looks at a person's DNA and figures out what percentage comes from different ancient ancestral groups, and it represents each of those groups with a different color. Okay, so this chart looks incredibly complex because, well, it is. Each of those super thin vertical lines is one person's DNA, and the colors show their unique ancestral recipe. Now, you don't need to read every single label here, just kind of soak in the patterns. We're about to zoom in on the most important takeaway from all this. Let's just boil down that crazy-looking chart. This table shows the main ancestral ingredients for the key groups we're looking at. For Ashkenazi Jews, the recipe is high in Middle Eastern components, moderate in European, and very low in the Caucasus component. Now, compare that to people from the Caucasus. Their recipe has a high Caucasus component. The recipes, they just don't match up. The final method is called identity by descent, or IBD. And this tool is so cool because what it does is it finds long, identical chunks of DNA that are shared between different people. And if you share one of these big blocks, it's really strong evidence that you have a common ancestor pretty recently. We're talking within the last 1,000 to 1,500 years, which you'll notice is the perfect time frame for testing the Khazar hypothesis. And honestly, this chart might be the most powerful slam dunk piece of evidence in the entire study. It shows how much recent DNA Ashkenazi Jews share with these other groups. Just look at that huge bar for Sephardi Jews, a massive amount of shared ancestry. Then you've got a significant chunk with Europeans, but now, look all the way over here at the Caucasus populations. The amount of shared DNA is minimal, it is practically zero. So let's pull all three of these different lines of evidence together and see what the study's final verdict really is. What's so amazing is how perfectly consistent the evidence is. The genetic GPS put Ashkenazi Jews right there with European and Middle Eastern groups. Their ancestral recipe was a clear match with other Jewish and Mediterranean populations, and the analysis of recent ancestors showed these incredibly strong links to other Jewish groups and virtually none to the populations from the old Khazar region. And this brings us to the study's own powerful conclusion. And I'm just going to read this directly from the paper because they say it so clearly. We confirm the notion that the Ashkenazi, North African, and Sephardi Jews share substantial genetic ancestry, and that they derive it from Middle Eastern and European populations, with no indication of a detectable Khazar contribution to their genetic origins. I mean, that's about as definitive a finding as you can get. It's just an amazing demonstration of how powerful genetics can be in answering these ancient questions. And it leaves us with an even bigger thought, right? In an age where we can literally read the story written in our own genes, you have to wonder, how many other chapters of human history are just sitting there, waiting to be rewritten?